Hi guys, welcome back to Homebuyer 101 class. In this section of class, we're going to cover what's involved in making an offer on a property. So you found that great property that you want to buy, and you're ready to make an offer. What are the things that you're going to need? Here are some of the things you're going to need right up front to put together an offer to send over to that seller. First of all, you're going to need a check for an earnest money deposit. What an earnest money deposit is, it's a check from the buyer that says they are earnestly considering purchasing this property. They want to buy this home. It is made out and held in one of the realtor's bank accounts up until closing, and at closing, it is credited to the buyer. But what it's there for is, if the buyer were to change their mind last second for just any reason whatsoever, they decide, well, I just decided I don't want the house, then typically that earnest money is given to the seller to compensate them for being off the market for a week or several weeks. Being under contract and not getting it sold and having to go back on the market means the seller's lost time, and possibly they've lost some financial benefit as well as what they're going to be able to sell the house for a month later, and they've been off the market. There are several things that are written into the contract that protect your earnest money as a buyer. We're going to cover those, but you'll need a check to write that earnest money check with. Secondly, you'll need to be there, and if you're purchasing the home with anybody else, they'll need to be there as well. We'll need all signatures on this offer at the time that we fill it out. In the state of South Carolina, a real estate offer is not valid unless it is in writing. You can't agree to sell a property over the phone by word of mouth and it stick. It won't hold up in court. It's all got to be in writing. The next thing you'll need is a copy of the seller disclosure. In the state of South Carolina, the state requires that a seller of a home fill out the state seller disclosure form. What that does, it's probably 4 or 5 pages long. It asks the seller, do you know of any issues with this home or with this neighborhood or with hazardous conditions around the house? And it'll go through specifically and ask them, and they have a chance to check off, yes, I know of a condition in this area, or no, I don't. So here's an example of what it may look like. They'll ask, do you know of any problems with the plumbing in this house? Do you know of any problems with the electrical system, with the air conditioning, with the major appliances? Do you know if the roof has any leaks in it? Do you know if the doors stick and don't open? Do you know if the foundation is okay? Is this house in a neighborhood where you have to pay an HOA fee every year because you belong to a neighborhood association, where at the end of the year you're going to have to pay that bill? That will say all of that in the seller disclosure, and you'll go through that just to see if there's any issues with the property that would be concerned to you. As well, it will also list out whether or not that property has a termite bond on it, whether or not all the bills have been paid. All those things, it's quite lengthy, or listed out, but it protects you in the process. The seller's required to give you an honest answer on if they know if there are any problems with that house and with that property. Another thing you'll need is your realtor will need to bring some comparable sales. They'll look at the houses that are under contract and have sold in that neighborhood and in that area and try and find similar style homes, similar size homes, and see exactly what they've sold for. That'll give you an idea if that seller is asking a fair price for their house, or maybe they're asking a little bit more than they should have. Maybe that might cause a problem with appraisal later, or maybe they're asking less than they could, and it's a really good value, and you know that up front. You might know that it's such a good value that you might expect that other buyers are going to be quickly trying to make an offer on that house as well, and that's important to know. So have your realtor bring those comparable sales. That'll give you an idea of what the house should cost and where you might want to start your offer as far as what you're going to offer them on price. And finally, you're going to need a copy of the South Carolina offer to purchase. And that'll be the 8-page offer to purchase where you fill in your name, the seller fills in their name, and you fill out all the items that are involved in that. Let me tell you a number of things that are located in the South Carolina offer to purchase that are going to protect you and protect your earnest money. Here are the things that protect you in the process. Number one, you have the right to have a home inspection. You can have a home inspector go through, do a full inspection on the house, and will give you a report. If there's something in that report that you're concerned about, you can go back and ask the seller to remedy that situation or those items. And if they refuse to, the contract says that earnest money is returned to you. You also have the right to have a termite inspection, which the legal name for it is a CO 100 is the name that you'll hear us use. And so it looks for termites, but it also might look for any other wood destroying entity, whether it's a fungus or anything else, or there's a leak that's causing wood rotting. And that will be one of the things that you'll need to, that will definitely be in the contract that protects you. Also, the contract says that the home must appraise for the sales price. Your lender is going to make sure that an appraiser comes out and does an appraisal on the house. It will be part of your closing costs as the buyer. You will be responsible for paying that appraisal, but they're going to make sure that that house is worth what the sales price is, and that they're not giving a loan that's worth, they're not loaning $10,000, $20,000 more on a house than the house is actually worth. So if the house does not appraise, the seller has the option of adjusting their sales price down to the appraisal price and selling. Or if they refuse to do that, the buyer has the option of getting their earnest money back and pursuing another option for a home. So the appraisal contingency is in there to protect you as well. There's also a clause that says if the house were to burn down while you're under contract, that you as a buyer have the right to, number one, take the land and the insurance check, or to back out of the deal and receive your earnest money back in full. So it protects you there as well. It also says that the seller has to be able to provide clear title to the property. That's one of the things your attorney will look at for you. Your closing attorney will research the title to make sure it's clear, that it doesn't have any liens against it, that all the taxes are paid, that everything's up to speed there, and there'll be no problems for you at closing with a clear title. And then finally it says, there's a section that talks about what financing you'll be trying to acquire, and it says that if for some reason you're not able to acquire financing on the property, that you will receive your earnest money back. So a number of things that protect you in that contract as far as you being able to get your earnest money back if there's some issues that weren't foreseen up front that come up. So our next step is filling out the offer to purchase. The South Carolina offer to purchase for real estate is a pre-printed form and contract that's mostly already filled in. There are several blanks on the contract that you'll fill in. The first few will be simply things like, what is the address of the property that you're buying? What is your name? But then you'll get to some blanks that can be negotiated between the buyer and seller. And we're going to talk about what are those things in the contract that are often negotiated back and forth between the buyer and seller. First of all, of course, is the price. You'll select the price that you want to offer, and oftentimes the seller will come back with a price that's a little bit higher than what you want to buy that property for, and it'll go back and forth a few times. Another thing, though, that's negotiated that people don't often think about is what date is the house going to close on. What we're seeing in our area for a normal close time period is about 30 to 45 days. A buyer can ask the seller to close a little further out, 60 days, 90 days, but as you get out past 60 days, even to 90 days, we'll see that the buyer is starting to lose a little bit of their negotiating position. The seller is hoping not to have to pay an extra 2 months of mortgage payments before they get their house sold. They'd rather sell it most times 30, maybe a 40-day time period. So you'll fill in a date that you'd like to close on. It's possible the seller may suggest in their counter offer another date to close on. But that's just one of the things that can be negotiated back and forth a little bit. The next thing that's negotiated is earnest money. And how much will that earnest money check be written for? I would say that at this time, different price houses have different norms for what the earnest money is. So for a $100,000 property in this area, we might see an earnest money deposit of somewhere from $1,000 to $2,000. For a $300,000 house, we might see a deposit from $2,500 to $5,000. It all varies. You can put down what you're comfortable with, and it's possible the seller may counter and say, we want a little bit different earnest money. Normally, earnest money is acceptable to the seller for what's decided on. The next thing that can be sometimes negotiated is financing and when financing is applied for. There'll be a section on a paragraph that talks about the financing that you're going to be trying to obtain, and it'll say that you are going to try and make a full application with your lender within, say, 7 to 10 days. If we were to put 3 weeks to get all your stuff into the lender, the seller may feel like, wait a minute, that's dragging feet a little too much, and they may request that we speed it up in getting things into the lender. So that's typically a 7 to 10 day period. There's also fill in the blank in the financing section that says when you will have loan approval from your lender. And that might be something that's 20 to 30 days out, maybe even a little further if you had a 45-day close. But that just says we will try and have everything lined up with the lender and the underwriting department at that lender telling us that this is a go within this amount of time frame. Sometimes that's something that can be negotiated back and forth. Oftentimes, that first request is acceptable. Sometimes a home warranty is negotiated. If it's an older home, a buyer may want to ask for a 1-year home warranty that would cover all the appliances and the electrical and the plumbing if there were any issues, and the heating and air conditioning system. Those run $525, $550, depending on the size of the house. It can be a little bit more. But oftentimes, a buyer will feel more comfortable moving into a home knowing that they might not have any large expenses that pop up in that first year. Sometimes that's something that's negotiated. Personal property, it will be another section that can be filled in on the offer to purchase. Let me tell you what conveys and what doesn't. Things that are attached to the house come with the house. So if there's a really nice chandelier in the dining room, it should come with the house. It's attached. A unique ceiling fan on the porch, that fan is attached. It comes with the house. A microwave that is over the stove in the kitchen that is built in comes with a house. A microwave that is sitting on the counter and plugged in does not come with the house. It's not attached. A toaster does not come with the house. So there are 3 big items that plug in that don't usually come with the house, but sometimes can be asked for, and we find new home buyers often ask for them. Those are the refrigerator, the washer, the dryer. They're all really big appliances, but they just sit in the corner and plug in. They're not attached. So if somebody's a first-time home buyer, they've got limited cash, they're hoping to get into a house, they don't own their own dishwasher, the dishwasher's attached, it comes with the house, but they don't own their own refrigerator or washer or clothes dryer, they can request those and see if the seller will be willing to convey those with the sale. They do need to remember that that's in the same way as asking for a little bit more off the house. Those are things that are negotiated. The seller may or may not be willing to leave those. Sometimes the seller is loading up and moving a long way, and they just prefer not to have the space taken up on the truck. Or they may be buying a house that already comes with those items or moving to a place that they won't need them. So that sometimes can be offered and requested. The last thing that I want to talk about that's sometimes negotiated in the contract is buyer closing costs. Your closing costs as a buyer sometimes can be requested to be paid for by the seller. I would say more than half of first-time home buyers that are buying their first home often will ask for the seller to pay some of their closing costs. If you'll remember earlier, we estimated that closing costs on a price of a home usually run about 3% of the purchase price. So let's say that we had a $200,000 house. We might estimate that closing costs could run around $5,000 to $6,000 for that house, about 3%. If the buyer would like to keep a little bit more money in their pocket, maybe to do some repairs, maybe to buy some new curtains and take care of a few things, it's not uncommon for a buyer to request that the seller pay $4,000 or $5,000 in earnest money, in closing costs on that $200,000 house. So that's something you can talk about with your realtor, what you'd like to offer there if you need to ask for some closing costs to be paid on your behalf. So once your offer's all written up, your agent will send it over to the seller's agent. Here's kind of what to expect there. Sometimes you might get a response back the same day from the seller with a counter. I would say that the majority of the time, over 90% of the time, the seller will often counter on price and ask for the buyer to come up a little bit on their price. So it's real common. And a lot of times there'll be maybe 1 or 2 other items, whether it's the closing date or the earnest money, or the most common negotiated point after price is closing costs. That's another one that is often negotiated. So you might expect an offer to go over, and I would say that normally offers go back and forth a couple times. It can be anywhere from 12 hours to 72 hours. Sometimes they'll go longer than that. Most everything's wrapped up within 2 days. Just remember that we are not officially under contract until everybody, both parties, sellers and buyers, have signed and initialed everything. And then that agent that represents the party that put the last initials on the contract calls the other agent or emails the other agent and says, we are under contract. At that point, you are officially under contract. Up until then, if another buyer comes in, there's nothing legally that is stopping that seller from entertaining another offer. So it's really important to try and get things done in a timely manner and make sure all the initials and signatures are on that document so that you're under contract. If another buyer comes in later, they can talk to them about having a backup offer in case yours falls through, but they are online for having to sell you that house, that property for that price that you've negotiated. So making sure that all signatures are on the contract, and then you are under contract. Next, we're going to be talking about what it takes, what's involved in the process of getting you from having your contract that's all signed, getting to the closing table. That'll be our next video. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you at From Contract to Close. Thanks so much.